The NFL draft has come and gone, and while we are in peak rookie draft season, I think there's always time to sneak in a best ball. And in this episode, we're going to do just that as we take a look at where IDP rookies have gone in the post NFL draft best ball world, what veterans were slotted around them. And now, when you look at this, whether you're in a win now dynasty team, prepping for other best balls, or just a redraft league, we've got you covered with that IDP rookie information. Welcome to IDP Drafts. All right, welcome in, guys. Today, we want to jump into Best Ball A tier, IDP only, and really talk about what we saw with some quick general observations and what this looked like now that we know all the landing spots for our favorite IDP rookies, as well as just what did it look like around those IDP rookies? What happened? Do we believe in that? Are we cool with it? Is it crazy? Something completely else? I don't know. We'll dive into some of those specific takes a little bit later in this episode. But at first, Scott, you wanted to run through some general observations and what we saw, again, in this first IDP only best ball with IDP rookies fully integrated.
The first observation is that this is so much more fun now that the rookies are in there. And it's not just because we had a great room, and we did have just an absolutely stacked room. We have 5 show hosts or analysts or people that you know and read and listen to. The 7 other folks that we had with us, we had multiple IDP invitational winners. We had people who've won multiple best ball leagues from that we've ran as a show in past years. We have several people who have already done probably 5 or 6 IDP only best ball drafts this offseason. So we had a whole lot of people that were really locked in, and the talent pool was bigger. The draft room was great. This was probably the most fun I've had in a best ball this offseason, thanks to the wonderful drafters with us and all these rookies. So speaking of all of these rookies, there were 26 rookies drafted in this draft out of, I believe, about 300 players total. So it was a 25 round, 12 team draft. If you want to break those down by position, and we'll have a link to the whole draft board. So if you want to see everything of where everyone went and who was around them, that'll be available for you. But there were 26 IDP rookies drafted. 2 are dual desi, obviously Travis Hunter, who we'll be getting to very soon. And then Jalen Walker was the only other dual designation player. For some reason this year, Sleeper is landing single designations on most of the IDP rookies. So could have been schemes or teams or whatever it might be, but a little bit less versatility is one of the other things that I noticed. But those 2 dual desi, 5 linebackers, DL was the biggest group. 13 defensive linemen were drafted, and these were DL only, so 14 if you include Walker. And then only 6 DB, which I think might have been a little surprising, at least to me, based on our previous conversations about when you look year over year at the IDP rookies that contribute in year 1, those lists have a whole lot of corners on them. So even though, Mr. Late Round DB, you can plug your ears if you need to, we like to fade defensive backs. In these drafts, I think there probably should be a little bit more of an appetite for them in those later rounds than we necessarily saw. But we'll get to some surprises here at the end. But the number 1, the highest picked player was at 101, who we'll be getting to in a moment. There were 4 rookies taken in the first 10 rounds, 9 taken in rounds 11 to 19, and then 13 in the final 5. So that distribution was about what I expected. Jake, I think you'd probably agree that the best time to take most rookies is near the end of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. And that's almost exactly the kind of curve I would expect to see and would hope to see, and not have people drinking too much of that hopium, to think that these rookies are going to be splashing too early. But we'll get into that more here as we dive into some of the picks.
And this also speaks to that idea that we had a very sharp room, because I think you're going to see a lot of these rookies going higher in future drafts. So we'll see their ADP probably go up from here. But I don't know that that's necessarily because they're worthy of even higher picks. It is just that excitement, that enthusiasm. And then the other last general observation that we had before getting into some of the specific players, because we could talk all 26, we could make this a marathon and we would love doing it, but we've chosen 8 that really jumped out at us. But again, that last general observation is just how much the draft order mimicked the dynasty rankings for these players. So I expected a little bit more shakeup there, because some guys you do love for their long-term outlook, their long-term success profile, but you don't really expect as much from 2025. But we saw those guys going pretty similar to where they went in dynasty. And again, near the top of the draft, I think that makes some sense, but it creates some interesting dilemmas when you get into the middle and the later portions of the draft, where it's okay, Mike Green may have all the talent in the world, but how much is he realistically likely to play in year 1 versus some other rookies who don't have as much talent, or maybe even equivalent or worse draft capital, but are much more likely to be higher snap count getters in their rookie seasons. So lots of players to talk about. We want to get into the names because this is what's going to help you the most as you're doing best balls, as you're getting ready for your dynasty drafts and thinking, if you're win now, who is it that you want on your team or might be able to do some maneuvering for? And, just really getting you ready for one of my favorite times of the year, rookie draft season, but also best ball season. So the first player that we wanted to talk about was the first overall pick, not the first rookie selected, the first overall pick in this IDP only best ball league. And that was Travis Hunter. So our very own Eric Harms took Travis Hunter at 101. And typically we're going to be starting off a lot of these conversations with Mike Wollert's initial projections for them for the 2025 season. Another great part of the IDP show draft kit, which I highly recommend you checking out if you haven't done so yet. There's Mike's projections. There's my rookie ranks. There's all kinds of wonderful things. Those are just the 2 that are top of my. Jake, I think you have at least one thing in there, don't you? You might want to do a little plug.
Oh, sure. It's nothing new. It's an evergreen content. It's just intro and maybe a slightly step up intermediate level of introduction to IDP. So, if you're newer to it, it has 2 sessions where I sit down with Joey the Tooth, who is also a part of this draft here with us, as well as Kyle Bellafield, both 2 wonderful humans and wonderful analysts over from Football Guys. We sit down and we just basically talk about how do you understand IDP football and how do you best play it or prepare yourself to play it, analyze things, because sometimes people want to listen to all this content, but also they want to be able to do a little bit of their own research and understanding. And that's something that's always included in there. And that's just something that, hey, if that interests you, that's another big piece of what you can get. I think it's almost 4 hours. It's broken down into smaller chunks, but it's a lot of information. And it's meant to help you as an IDP player understand how to research and enjoy the game even more.
If you're listening to this show, you probably already play a decent amount of IDP, but 2 things for you. One, you'll never know the things that you'll pick up from just sort of hearing concepts that you might already know from a fresh perspective. I attend research method conferences all the time, and I still love going to intro tracks because I'm reminded of how to do things and I learn new ways of thinking about things too. So this is a great resource, even if you've been in IDP for a while. But also, if you're listening to this, you can probably relate to that phenomenon of it's dynasty season. You have an empty spot in one of your leagues and you reach out to a friend and they say, oh, IDP, I don't do IDP. Now you have a great resource to send them to say, look, it's fun. This is the way to play fantasy football. And here is a crash course that is ready-made for someone like you. So I know that was a huge diversion, but the draft kit is just a phenomenal resource. Those videos that you guys put together are just a phenomenal resource. So I wanted to give them their due credit and some space here. But Travis Hunter, the man of the hour, the man of the year, the man of the decade in IDP fantasy football already, was 101. And I have feelings. I'm still processing those feelings, even though this draft is almost a week in the books. On the one hand, the upside is certainly there. He's in an unprecedented role, sleeper by default. has offensive scoring settings in there. So he's going to get his receptions, his receiving yards, his receiving touchdowns, as well as his IDP stats. So I think there is a path to drafting him 101. I don't know that I would have had the courage to do so, because another thing we're going to be doing throughout this episode is talking about who was passed over to get them, and what we sort of think of that slotting. And obviously at 101, you're passing over everybody. You're passing over Parsons and Watt and Hutchinson and literally every other player to get Hunter. And as fun as it is to get Hunter, and I love the dynasty value of someone like Hunter, where you can sort of see after year one what this is likely going to look like, and you want to have that long-term investment. I wasn't so sure this is the direction that I would have gone with 101. But Jake, I know, like everyone, you like Hunter as well. What did you think of him being the first overall selection in this draft?
I love it because I think it's exactly like you said. It's fun. It's fun. It's exciting. You're playing on the speculation and the hope of what could be. In the sense of how we run these IDP best balls, right? There's so many of them. They're kind of low stakes, right? We're talking $5-10. I can get behind that to diversify my portfolio, right? If I just haven't had a chance to get them, I can see doing it because the upside's there. The real difficulty with me though, in saying I'm definitively behind Travis Hunter as a 101 is there's no precedent for this whatsoever, right? And you look at, you talked about Mike's projections and rankings that you can get in the draft kit. I mean, he's got him, slotted in at cornerback 144. I mean, is that really that much more added on top of what a wide receiver can do? Now a wide receiver who, is he the one behind Brian, or the two behind Brian Thomas? Is he the one because he was drafted second overall and there's all this hope? Like, there's just so much that goes into this that I can't even begin to fathom how to confidently project that outward. So I don't know that I can definitively make that statement as Travis Hunter should be a locked in 101. But again, I'll end up with a 101, 102, 103 at some point here in some of these drafts, I'm sure. And he's sitting there, and I'm not going to have any of them. I'm likely to do it to diversify my portfolio and to ride the ride that is his upside and potential, speculation to the moon for him in terms of best ball performance. But I think you nailed the head on everything else, right? As a dynasty asset, I don't know how you can't have this guy in your roster if you have the opportunity to put him there.
Yeah, and to provide a little bit more context on Mike's projection, that's for IDP only stats. So he didn't factor in any projected receiving stats, yardage, anything like that. And one of the awesome things about Mike's projections in the draft kit is you can customize them for your league settings. But, the thing that we love here is the big three setting, because it just works really well for rewarding big plays. And so using big three, Mike has him slotted in at 60.1 fantasy points. So what you can think of is, say you think he's going to be wide receiver 20. Look up wide receiver 20 in your league, add 60 points to that, and see if that is approaching IDP 1. That is going to be the best way that you can do it. But again, like I said, you can update this for your own settings. For me, it's a fun pick. Like you said, I wonder if this was a $50 league instead of a $5 league, if Harms would have still pulled the trigger at 101. He might have, because there is very clearly that path where he could be IDP 1 for the season in a league that scores both sides of the ball. But to me, it's fun. It is fun. Let's leave it at that. It's very fun. So love it for him. A guy that I just love in general, but I'm not also so convinced. Man, I'm such a downer here in the beginning, but Abdul Carter, now with the New York Giants, defensive end, formerly at Penn State. He went at 201. So just missed first round IDP draft capital in this IDP only best ball draft that we did. And he is someone who I, again, love from a dynasty perspective. Kayvon Thibodeau, I believe they exercised his 5th-year option, so he's got another year, but he is not going to be eating into Carter's snaps in the long term. Carter does have that stress reaction that everyone's been covering, and so that might lead to a little bit of caution early in the season, but I can still see Carter having a very, very productive 2025 rookie campaign. My concern is the opportunity cost at taking him at 201. And this was Country Boy Swagger, who is one of the sharpest IDP drafters out there. When you see that name in a draft, don't be afraid, but pay attention because he is someone who's done a lot of these, has been very successful in these kind of leagues. So he knows what he's doing. But looking at Mike's projection, Mike has him projected currently, and these are going to be changing. The last time I was in there, I saw it's a Google sheet. I saw the little icon if someone else was in the document, and it was Mike's icon. So I'm sure he's constantly looking at these things. But currently he's projected as defensive lineman 84. And if he ends up as defensive lineman 84, you are not going to be thrilled having taken him at the 13th overall pick in an IDP only league. I think he's going to finish higher than that. I really do believe that he's going to be more productive and going to have a better season. But still, you're passing, if you look at just other defensive linemen, you're passing on Brian Burns, who went right after Carter. You're passing on Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Greenard. So take your pick of the Vikings edge rushers. You're also passing on that very top tier of linebacker, as Zaire Franklin, Zach Bond, and Ernest Jones went right after this pick as well. So love Carter really for the long term, like him for the short term, but to me, 13th overall pick in an IDP only league is just, it's another fun one. And, we love having fun in the first draft where we have rookies, and it's certainly within the range of outcomes that he could finish as IDP 13 this season. But I think it's a pretty narrow probability to get to that high. What is your thought, Jake?
Yeah, this is one that I definitely kind of dove into a little bit, right? Because it's interesting, it's intriguing, it's fun. Like, you see the talent of Carter, and we're like, yeah, the upside's there. I totally get it. But what is the reasonable outcome of this exact scenario that we're talking about here? So when I've looked back at the last 3 years, and you look at some of the top rookies who played some of the top snaps, right? So Verse, Latu, and Chop Robinson all last year, they all scored 185, 112, 129 respectively in Big Three scoring. The year before that, Byron Young, we'll just call him Tuli. Will Anderson, right? 183, 147, 171, 145. And really, when you look at 2022, this is probably your most optimistic outlook is Aiden Hutchinson's rookie year, where he played almost 1,000 snaps and scored almost 205 points in Big Three scoring, right? But Trevon Walker, Kayvon Thibodeau, right? We talked about him, and Karlaftis that year, 122, 160, 147. None of these scores are really earth-shattering or amazing performances for us when you look at them in totality. Now, there's some context to some of these, right? Late performances, late half season performances, and they dropped, some big games, and so that was great. But at 13, I'm wanting to find something a little more consistent for my roster. And you talked about Brian Burns, right? He's got 5 straight seasons of 200 plus points, right? You look at Zaire Franklin, 3 straight of 250 plus or near 250. I think 248 one of those years, right? I mean, that's the opportunity cost that you talked about right there. I don't know that I can do that. As much excitement and belief that there can be in Abdul Carter, I just don't know that I can get there. And plus, Lawrence Taylor nor Phil Simms are going to let him wear their numbers in New York. So then, I mean, that's just immediate downgrade right there. So, but no, fun pick. But I just don't see Abdul Carter being worth it just quite yet there at 201. Next year, I'm sure the hype will be there, and that's exactly where he should belong because he'll show the flashes we expect. But for year one, I do have my hesitations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Carter, we've talked about him a lot across the platform that everyone seems to think arrow up long term. I think the only question is for 2025, because even if you mentioned that best case outcome of a 205 point season using Big Three scoring, according to Wollert's projections, that would slot him in around DL 7 or 8. So DL 7 or 8, great return on investment for pick 13. I think we would all be happy with something like that. But again, that is using the best possible case scenario over the last, 4 years or so of the data that you looked at. And while I think Carter's talent is there, I don't think the situation is good enough where he's going to be playing 80-90% of snaps right out of the gate to be able to hit those kind of numbers. So I'm probably somewhere in between that sort of pie in the sky estimate and Mike's estimate, which would still land him as probably a DL3, DL4 kind of range for this particular season. So taking him at 113 is going to be fun to watch him play, but is maybe a little too rich for my blood too.
Yep. Yeah. And you nailed it. Opportunity is going to be one of the biggest factors for him. And, he does have Thibodeau there still. Dexter Lawrence, I know he's interior, but just another body and another talent to kind of absorb some of those opportunities. Obviously, Brian Burns a lot. So we still love Abdul Carter. He is someone who I think definitely has the case in the upside, like you said, for a really good dart throw. And one of those dart throws could definitely be, maybe pick 5 or pick 6 in our favorite D-up draft. So just real quickly, hear from our friends over at Fast Draft.
I am proud to announce that Fast Draft now has an all-defense game called D-Up. That's right, fans of IDP finally have a real money best ball game that they can play. No more manually setting up leagues every time you want to do a draft. No. Now you can play for 10 grand, 2,000 to first. Could draft up to 30 teams, all defense. And the best part, balanced scoring, tackles for loss, pass breakups. It all factors in. Just draft 6 defensive players, top 4 into your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's so easy that this isn't just for IDP people. If you love the NFL, then you'll love this game. And for the first time with Fast Draft, you can sweat both sides of the ball on Sunday. So use your host promo code to get a $25 deposit match, and you'll love this D-Up contest because it's about time we got one.
All right, moving on to the third rookie in our most recent best ball draft here. We got pick 910, Carson Schwesinger, Cleveland Browns linebacker. By one of our good friends too, Joey the Tooth, making this pick. So Mike has him has Carson Schwesinger, not Joey the Tooth, projected for LB41 here this year, coming in for Cleveland, and that feels about rightish, especially when you look at what's in that linebacker room right now. It is a bit ambiguous, so the chance to come forward at some point this season definitely feels like a very real outcome. However, still a lot of bodies to get through, and a lot of bodies that have, they've done stuff before. There's Jerome Baker, Muhammad Diabate, Jordan Hicks. Prayers up for JOK. Hopefully, he somehow finds a way back in, because his second half of last year was something to be very excited about moving forward. So that's a lot of bodies to get through, but the draft capital says a lot here too. For what the Browns probably think and what they want from Schwesinger. So I'm very optimistic with Joey's pick. I will say he was in my queue, right? So Joey and I were drafting back to back. I was hoping that he made it back to me in round 11. That's where I was like my optimal draft. I was like, yeah, I feel really good or comfortable taking him right there. So I was excited about just some other names that did go right around there then. EJ Speed, Landon Roberts, Matt Milano, Trevin Wallace. A lot of names that we're probably familiar with already. Speed, as LB2 in Indianapolis. Roberts as a big run thumper, but seems to maybe be the lead in Las Vegas, but don't really see him as a strong coverage guy, being out there for all 3 downs still. Milano, has dealt with some really bad injuries lately, and Bernard has kind of usurped the lead role there. And Wallace, a second-year guy, really kind of came in through some injuries last year, gave us a little bit of spark, but nothing too fancy there. So I look at that group and I think that's a group he can overcome, right? I can see him doing that, but again, what is the realistic range of outcomes? I don't know. I could see him fitting in right into the middle of that group there too. So I'm not really mad about this pick in any way, except for the fact I wanted to get it a couple rounds later myself. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence here. I think I can be okay with it, but I don't know. It might be a little bit too much for me to hope here in year one.
The 2 things that make me like this pick more than dislike it. One, the fact that he was able to wait 3 rounds after the other rookie linebacker, Jihad Campbell, went at 608. So again, we're not going to go through all of the landing spots for everyone. The draft board will be available. But I think I would rather have Schwesinger at that 910 capital than Campbell at 608, even though I do like Campbell a little bit more than Schwesinger, especially in the rookie season. So that's one. And the second is just the names that you had that were drafted afterwards. Linebacker was pretty dried up by the 9th round there, in part because I started the draft with 6 straight linebackers. I looked at some of my other builds and felt a little gross at linebacker. So I said, you know what? I am not going to have that happen this time. I love a lot of the rookie edge rushers and some of the rookie DBs. So I am just going to hammer linebacker, off-ball linebacker early and often, and did just that. So given, we don't know what EJ Speed is going to be doing in Houston this year, where that's a very murky linebacker room. You mentioned Roberts has some limitations. Milano has health issues. Wallace, we'll see what he ends up being or not. I like Schwesinger over all of them. This doesn't feel like a reach to me, and I feel like the value is pretty on point. So this is one that I can definitely pretty solidly get behind.
I think you swung me over to the Foley I'm on board thing. So next time I'm just gonna have to take him, in round 8 so that Joey can't snipe me here in round 9. All right, moving on to the next one. I want to talk about James Pearce Jr., defensive end, Atlanta. So our good boy WSC Panther with this pick here. Mike Wollert's got him coming in at a projection of DL 113, so quite a ways down the board here. Some other names he was taken over his teammate and drafted before him, Jalen Walker, Donovan Ezaraku, Brian Brisset, and Keon White. So this is one that, again, intrigued me a lot because Pearce, I think, is someone that a lot of us here at the IDP show, and I'm going to guess in general, especially even the Falcons, right? They traded a first-round pick to come up and get this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone has a lot of belief in Pearce as a talent, right? That he can really deliver a lot. The biggest thing for me that I struggle with in getting excited about this pick at this spot is I do question whether or not he just starts as a rotational piece for them, just because they've brought in some other veteran talent. They've spent other draft capital here in this draft and previous drafts just before this. So they really have filled out this room a lot more in the last 2-3 years. Now, I would like to believe that Pearce can overcome that, but that is something that even top talent, someone similar, Chop Robinson, who went late in the first round last year, in a much lighter edge rusher room that the Dolphins had due to injuries, it still took him till the end of the season to find his way into that rotation or into that role more fully. And right now Atlanta's looking at a fully healthy edge rusher room. So I really don't know that I can get excited about him at this spot. Ones that really kind of stand out to me is Brian Brisset. I think that he's someone who I was very high on him coming in a few years back. He's shown his chops as a pass rusher. If he can find a way to really make his name as a run defender for them and add to his value that way, now, someone like Brisset, I'm definitely taking that over James Pearce here, because now I got a guy who's a solid floor, who has a little bit of an upside too. And I really want to be able to inject that into my lineup more frequently than hoping that James Pearce finds a way to, land a sack, out of 20 pass rush opportunities or 15 pass rush opportunities in a given game. So I get the path to success. I just don't know that I see it year one.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that gives me a little bit of hesitation is actually Keon White. I know White had all the hype in the world going into last season and didn't live up to that. And I know there's a new coaching staff. I know they've brought in a couple of pieces on their defensive line. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's used. But I still think I would be higher on White than Pearce for this season. Other than that, I really don't have much of a problem with it. Like you mentioned, he went after Walker, but he had more draft capital than Walker, if you think about it, because he was 2 first-round picks, because they used that pick and they, had to move the future. So they gave up a lot to get him, and he's going to see the field. You're right. He could be more of a rotational piece, but I believe the pieces he's rotating with is Leonard Floyd, who is best as a rotational piece. Arnold Ebiketie, who been pulling for, but hasn't ever really put it together yet.
No.
New teammate Jalen Walker, and that's it. So I could see it being a high rotation setup among those 4 players. And I think that's going to, 1, limit any of their fantasy viability, but 2, also mean that, he can be a rotational player and still get more than 25% in snaps. He could be more than a Bryce Huff was, and not need Bryce Huff like productivity 2 years ago to make him worthy of this pick. So for me, it would have been a kind of a 3-way coin flip between Pearce, Walker, and White. I like Ezeraku. I'm the one who took Ezeraku a few picks later. So, but if Walker and Pearce had both been there, I probably would have taken either of them over Ezeraku. So I like this pick overall. You're starting to get into that flyer DE, starting defensive tackle range, and I get the allure of the edges in these kind of situations.
Yeah, and I think you allude to a really good point, right? That's hard to fully contextualize without breaking down every roster even further. That, hey, maybe this is you went heavy linebacker, right? So now it's like, okay, now I'm just going to load up on a lot more dart throw type DEs at this point. So there's definitely some of that context and flavor to that here. We're kind of glossing over this at a very high level. Because one of the things I even consider in looking at, this pick here, and the next one, and even a little bit into that is, would we have been happy with a really strong starting safety over some of these options, right? That if you look at, I think CJ Gardner-Johnson, Cam Bynum, Jordan Battle, Hufanga, Merrick, Brisker, a lot of these starting safeties that have had some either really good IDP seasons for us or very consistent IDP production over multiple years. I mean, are those guys maybe a better opportunity than some of these rookies? Again, that lays more into the roster construction portion of it, and kind of where you see the value there, and also playing the probabilities that defensive backs tend to have a lot more variance in their year-to-year scoring too. So
yeah,
it's just a good point you bring up to kind of contextualize a bit more of this. So.
Yeah, and I just pulled up Mike's projections on some of those other names we listed who went after, and Pearce is higher than most of them. I think White is the only one that edges out Pearce. So it's definitely in the range of outcomes. Because Jalen Walker's down there at 131, and where did we say Pearce was? 113. So a lot of this is going to be fluid as time goes on. I know Mike was just telling us in the Slack. Falcons beat reporter is projecting Walker to be a starter and Pearce to be a rotational piece. But, chatter this early in the offseason is interesting and it's fun and gives us stuff to talk about amongst each other. But we'll see. I think this is one that could end up looking like an absolute brilliant pick if Pearce becomes locked in starting edge opposite Leonard Floyd and Walker kind of rotate with each other, and Walker plays a little bit of off ball as well. I think we need to learn more about how they're going to use Walker before downgrading Pearce too much. So there's enough upside for this, and we're in the 15th round. So it's not like we're taking this bigger upside swing over a lot of more proven guys, 5 or 6 rounds earlier.
All right, moving on. We got pick 1710. Mykell Williams, defensive end, San Francisco 49ers. Going back to our good friend, Joey the Tooth, getting a bit of a homer pick here for his San Francisco 49ers. And this is one I actually, looking at James Pearce, I actually like Mykell Williams slightly better than that. I know Mike's projections don't align with that thinking. He has Mykell at 128 versus James Pearce, we just talked about, his 113. But this, to me, I love the path to opportunity. I don't know that it could be any more clear for one of these first-round pass rushers in terms of the path of least resistance laid out in front of them. I'm also a big believer in Robert Saleh in terms of what they can do and what he's done as the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator in the past. It really feels like he gets the most out of all of his talent. Now, Mykell Williams is raw. I don't know that we can expect big sack numbers from him, but because of his strength as a run defender, that's where I actually get really excited for him and think that he could actually carve out a role where he can be a 7, 8, 9 points a week kind of guy for you with some regularity. And then he can spike in those other weeks where it's like, I kind of like having that, especially in the 15th, 16th, 17th round. I can get, again, I got something to fill in for injuries and it's consistent, or, if I just have some down weeks elsewhere, he's always going to plop in there and give me some points. So I keep moving forward. So very, very excited. I actually love this pick a lot. When you look at some of the other names going around him, Gervin Dexter, Derek Hall, of the Seahawks, Jonah Ellis of the Ellis brothers. I don't know, Christian Ellis, Caden Ellis, Jonah Ellis. And I think there's a fourth one I'm missing. Those are some good genetics, sir. If you can land 4 players into the NFL, I mean, the Watt brothers did 3, but Ellis has got them beat at 4. There'll probably be 5 or 6 coming here somewhere along the way. But after that, and Mike Green, another rookie here. I actually think that was my pick too. But anyways, so a lot of names here were, again, guys who have delivered some performances. Gervin Dexter's solid tackle floor. He can give you 5, 6, 7 sacks in a season. He's obviously a great NFL player, but for IDP, pretty basic, I guess, production for us in terms of DLs being lumped in together, right? As a defensive interior, really enjoy having him on a roster. Hall just really kind of hasn't fully lived up to some of the hype he had. And, again, another rookie in Mike Green and Jonah Ellis, probably looking at a tough path to playing time there in Denver with some standout players over there as well. So to me, this felt like a pretty good pick. I dare say a really good pick that, like I said, a little jealous of, again, Joey getting in my feelings here and sniping me a little bit too much. So, but where did you land on Mykell Williams?
The early first round draft capital, leads me to believe he's going to get snaps. And a lot of those other guys we just mentioned are going to be in rotations. Like I love Seattle's defense in real life. I am very nervous about having many pieces of Seattle's defense in fantasy, especially their defensive line, because they have just an insanely deep defensive line. And I'm sure Leonard Williams is going to have another good year. But outside of Leonard Williams, I don't know if it's DeMarcus Lawrence who's there now, or Uchenna Nwosu, or Boye Mafe, or Derek Hall. I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches on the edge there. Sort of the same thinking when you think about Jonah Ellis in Denver, because you have Benito, you have Cooper. He is the odd man out, at least currently, of that group. You never know what might happen with injuries and whatnot, but Williams has the clearest path to the most snaps. And in the 17th round, getting a player who is penciled in as a starter, really the only person who I would have had a little bit of a toss up is Gervin Dexter, because in part I have a soft spot for the defensive linemen. I wrote up Dexter a lot last year as a DL streaming option, and I'm guessing I will be again this year if his rostership doesn't significantly increase here sooner, because I think he has a lot of talent and his surrounding cast is only getting better, which should leave him more opportunities to score. But I think they're in the same range. So I don't have a problem with this pick. And again, thinking about where we are in the draft, we're in round 17 now. So we're in that sort of final part of that middle chunk where you're really building out your roster and you want to get good high snap guys before you start to take your really big swings with your last couple of picks. And remember, we saw 13 rookies drafted in just those last 5 rounds. So to me, this is one of the safer rookies to be able to get before we transition into that next portion. And in that next portion, we have another guy who we didn't know his path to snaps until, as I mentioned, Mike had shared that beat report about Atlanta players looking at starting roles, and Xavier Watts was listed as one of those guys. So Watts, as a safety, defensive backs always get pushed down the draft boards when we look at these IDP only best ball drafts, or really any IDP draft. Defensive backs rightfully get pushed down the draft board. But someone like Watts, who doesn't have a lot of competition, is now already being talked about as a prospective starter, has a lot of upside. When you look at the other guys that are going around him, they're guys that are very or guys that are in new situations. So it's Tony Adams, Javon Holland, Marcus Jones, who I really do like. But then Jair Brown, who I like the talent, but I just don't know who's going to end up emerging there in San Francisco in those starting safety spots. So Watts has as good, if not a better opportunity to start out of the gate than most of those other players that we just talked about. I think he has more upside probably than anyone but Jones. And Jones is also in part due to the fact they might start using on offense a little bit sprinkled in. If he's going to keep doing punt returns, there's that punt return upside, which enhances his value. So he's the only player who I have a little bit higher. But I would take Watts over Adams. I would take Watts over Holland. I would take Watts over Brown. So I like this. This is as safe of a pick in round 21 as you can get in terms of a rookie DB.
Yeah, I think I'm in alignment there. I like Holland a little more, but I mean, it's also he's likely to be playing a lot of deep safety. You know, Newbin coming back healthy, showing what he's capable of playing down more in that box alignment or taking more of those box snaps. So, and you know, Watts playing alongside Jesse Bates, who's showing he can play anywhere on the field. I'm guessing they'll end up doing more of a split field type of approach, not a, you know, box safety versus a deep safety type thing, which can limit that there. But you know what? Xavier Watts showed that he can be a playmaker at the college level. He's playing alongside one of the best safeties, maybe to, you know, ever do it, or at least in the last 20 years here in Jesse Bates. So you really couldn't ask for a better situation in terms of that. And I agree with you. We're in the start of the 21st round. I mean, this is where, you know, you can differentiate your roster early to say, hey, no one's in on Xavier Watts yet. I'm going to get in on him because I believe in him. You know, and that's where some of this kind of goes into some of those personal beliefs and what you see from the player, and really kind of driving it from there. Because again, Marcus Jones is the only one who stands out as something of an outlier potentially in this group. And like you said, there you laid out that he's got multiple outs to make it happen. Well, then that's that. Then you take, you know, your swing that way. But really, those are the only two there. Otherwise, you know, yeah, I think Watts is a great pick here by our good friend Jeff here from the IDP show.
Mm-hmm. So while we love that pick, we have to talk about some of the bad picks, and one of them is coming up next. You know, I have no idea what this drafter was doing, if he even knew that we were having. No, I'm just kidding. We have one of Jake's picks. We wanted to wrap up with a couple of our picks late to talk a little bit about why we took some of these guys. So Jake, tell me a little bit about why Chris Paul.
I mean, one of the best
Actual point
distributors in
guard.
NBA history. I mean, just yeah, right. So I'm sure he's never gotten tired of any of those jokes. It's like when people were just like, "Oh, Jake from State Farm." And it's like, "Yep, never heard that one. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys."
Did you just burn all of your red polos immediately when that
You're
started
right.
happening, or do you still
Red
keep some of them around?
red polos and khakis just out the window. I'm done with all these. No. But Chris Paul Jr., linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know that I could pick a linebacker room that has just no resistance in terms of a strong way to earn a way into a starting role. I know that there's some believers in Omar Spates, and I think he's definitely earned the opportunity to prove he belongs on the field, with what he's done, you know, last year. And you know, they brought back, I believe, Troy Reeder, so you know, you got a veteran who has been in the building before. So obviously, there's a lot to be said about knowing where to be, being in the right spot, communicating, those types of things. But this feels eerily similar to me, to Ivan Pace from a few years ago, right? This undersized, rangy, you know, playmaking type of linebacker who kind of gets overlooked in the draft. I mean, the Rams still took him in the 5th round, but goes into a place where, again, there's some capability in that linebacking room, but maybe not a ton. And I think he has a chance to make a name for himself, and I really believe he can do that. And I'm excited to see him maybe make the field, hopefully, maybe by their bye week at the latest, but maybe even before that. And in the 22nd round, I mean, well, I could take another DB, right? Another cornerback if I can find another nickel somewhere, or if I can handcuff maybe to a linebacker room somewhere else. But I'd rather take a swing on where this is a guy who I think has a chance to earn at least LB2, which isn't always as valuable in the Rams defensive plays, and the way they play. But I also think he has a chance. There's an outcome. Maybe it's 5%, you know, 10%, but he becomes LB1 somehow by end of season for the Rams. And I'm willing to, you know, get on that ride here in the 22nd round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike has him unranked. You know, he doesn't have a projection for him because it's just like you mentioned, so murky. And I'm sure depending on what ends up happening there, he might end up popping in later on in the offseason. But when you look at the other players that were taken around him, I'm not in the 22nd round. It's hard to say like legitimately with a straight face, oh, this was just a terrible pick. What were they thinking here? Because, unless you're taking someone who's retired or someone who you're confusing their name for someone else's name. Like I saw there was an A Carter in the database before the rookies were added, and I was waiting for someone to accidentally take them thinking they were Abdul Carter when really it was some other A Carter who hasn't played in a few years.
Right.
But, the other players that were taken around him, Cedric Gray, Leo Chenal, Derek Barnes, Divine Diablo. Diablo is the only one who makes me sit up in my chair a little bit in terms of might have more value than Paul, or at least a potentially cleaner path. I know there is a new defensive coordinator there, as like the whole world knows now because of the prank call incident. But Atlanta has historically been a very good spot for both of their linebackers. Mike's ears have got to be burning between us talking about his projections, but he also has a great article that you can find on the idpshow.com about defensive coordinator changes and what they mean for fantasy outlooks. So take a look at that if you want to get a sense of how linebacker 2 in Atlanta might play. But you're right. Paul is very much in a path of less resistance kind of room where he can work his way up towards that LB1 spot in potentially short order. And so this could end up being one of those picks, especially, and I can't remember in your build if you did this or not, but if you took any of the other Rams linebackers, like last year, I loved taking Devin White and Zach Bond in the hopes that one of them would pan out, and it turned out one of them did. So in some of these murky rooms in best ball leagues, especially as you get towards the back end of the draft, it's fun to do some hedging, or, for the person who had the other Rams linebackers currently, I'm sure they were not really happy when they saw you take Chris Paul, because I'm sure he was one of those names that was going to come off the board at one point or another. All right, so my brilliant pick, since I know my pick, this is my ride or die. As we're recording this, I just finished up writing my annual degenerate draft guide for those of you who are in super deep IDP leagues. Like I'm currently in a 16-team 8-round draft. I'm about to start up a 12-team 10-round draft. So for those of you who are looking for some really interesting deep names, I'm going to share some of my insights on them, especially ones that I'm significantly higher on than Adam and Jason, who are the other two rankers in the IDP show draft kit for rookies. But it's Nohl Williams, corner out of Kansas City. And I know corners aren't the most exciting of picks, but we see a lot of them go in these rounds. If you look at the last 3 rounds of any best ball, you're going to see a ton of corners. The reason why I went with this particular rookie corner is twofold. First, anytime you look up Dane Brugler's The Beast right up on him, or PFF's draft guide, you'll see he is a physical corner who's not afraid of tackling. So even though he played primarily outside at Cal, he still has a lot of that tackle instinct. He's not afraid to be able to make tackles. I said twofold. There's really a third. The Chiefs traded up to get him. They got him in the 3rd round, and they didn't want someone else to snag him. But the reason why he is my favorite dart throw, and I'm trying to walk away with him in the last rounds of every single rookie draft I'm in, is he was a pretty good kick returner in college. And it's very rare that you find defensive backs that have that kick return upside. Kansas City is also a team that doesn't really have a locked-in kick returner. There was Mykell Hardman, I think, most of the year last year. He has since left. He was in Green Bay last I saw. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I know the running back that Kansas City drafted also has some kick return upside, but in the new formation, you have to have 2 guys back there. And with them changing the rules yet again to encourage even more returns, I'm okay with someone who is a timeshare kick returner who is going to get some playing time on defense because he has that tackle upside that I like to see. and not an overly scary room to overcome in Kansas City, despite I keep forgetting the guy's name. They just brought in a corner from the Chargers, signed him to a 2-year deal, who slotted in as one of their outside starters, but he is on a 2-year deal, but they have an out after this year, and his PFF grades aren't anything to write home about. Chamari Connor at the nickel isn't anything to write home about, and Williams played a little bit of nickel. So in terms of late round dart throw DBs, there are ones you can throw darts at that are going to get more playing time that did not get drafted in this draft. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the undrafted players here. But in terms of someone who could end up having, a Marcus Jones, Keyshawn Nixon kind of upside, I don't think he's either of them necessarily, but he is the one that fits that profile. And I have a soft spot for them. I took Jones everywhere his rookie year. Last year, I took Sione Vaki, and it didn't work out because they only played him at running back, as third string running back at that, even though he played some safety in college as well. But Nohl Williams is the premier DB kick returner in this year's draft. Whether he ends up returning kicks in the NFL, who knows? But sign me up every year for that guy if they exist.
Christian Fulton is the name you were looking for, by the way.
Yeah.
You're curious. Yeah. You hooked me as soon as you talked about kick returner, man. Like I
saw you started to write something down too. That was like high praise. He's taking a note here.
No, so I mean, I like that they traded up for him. I did not realize that he had such strong kick returning chops coming out. So definitely something I got to look into and understand there. Chamari Connor was serviceable in the slot for Kansas City. He had some good moments overall in the year, but I think that could be something where that's the other kind of thing here, right? Like maybe this isn't as much. Obviously, we're talking best ball right now and redraft, but when you look at dynasty, right? Like if you're talking about the guy who can be a slot corner in Spagnuolo's defense, I mean, yeah, I want that cornerback on my roster. Even if it's just a DB only type league on Sleeper, like I could definitely see that guy still slotting in as my DB3 or higher if he's got kick return upside and punt return upside. And so yeah, this is a fun one. This was really cool for me because I did not have the exposure and knowledge base on Nohl Williams. So thank you for imparting that to me as well as our good listeners here. So I'm very excited to see what he comes on. He's going to end up being one of those names I end up watching. Hopefully I can do it because I got him on a few rosters as well.
Nice.
But that said, we wanted to jump into one last little topic here. Were there any undrafted surprises? And when we say undrafted, they didn't make it into our top 300 of this most recent best ball. Not those undrafted gems that were also scouring through here from the NFL draft. But Scott, you had a few names you wanted to talk through with us here. So why don't you kick us off with number one?
It's unsurprising positions. So we mentioned it before. Defensive back rookies tend to be very solid scorers, but we only saw 6 of them drafted. The one name at defensive back that jumped off the page at me at being undrafted was Maxwell Hairston, formerly out of Kentucky. He was that guy, if you're unfamiliar, but you watched the draft, who was hugging every single player and pumping them up as they walked out. That was him. So you kind of want to cheer for him to begin with after seeing that. But he has first round corner draft capital. First round corners tend to play, and rookie corners tend to get picked on, which is a pretty good thing from a fantasy perspective. So Hairston, plays outside, isn't in like an ideal fantasy scoring kind of setup. He doesn't play that slot role, but he is someone who is going to play and is going to get some PBUs, maybe a pick or two, some tackles. He's just going to be one of those boring guys to have on your roster. But compared to some of the other DBs that we saw go, which are, some third string safeties who might not see the field being taken at the end of the draft. And I'm fine with that if you're solid at DB before that. But if you're doing all DB dart throws, you want to have some pretty reliable guys, and Hairston is one to me. Also, a couple of big guys in the middle who I think have pretty rosy 25 outlooks who were not picked. You got Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of the Giants, going to be on just an incredible Giants defensive line with Burns, Carter, Thibodeau, Sexy Dexy in the middle, and he hasn't had a good running mate since BJ Hill was there several years ago. Leonard Williams, at times, but he was injured some of his time in New York there as well. But Darius Alexander, got the draft capital, has the talent. And then same for Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan was a defensive tackle who had a lot of metrics that I liked coming into the draft. I think he was my DT2. He got the draft capital. He's in Arizona, which is a very soft room to have to overcome. But I'm also, this is who wasn't drafted and who's surprising. I shouldn't say I'm that surprised about him, because there's always some good starting defensive linemen that don't get drafted in the end of all of these drafts. But again, if you're taking a lot of dart throws, you might want to have some of these boring defensive line plays that are going to have at least a handful of maybe not boom weeks, but viable weeks to help build the floor of your roster.
I love it. And again, you're always giving the love to the big beefy boys in the middle, so I respect that and appreciate that as an aficionado of them myself. So thank you so much, Scott, for everything you put together with the show. It's great talking through some of our favorite rookies here in our first IDP best ball post NFL draft. But I think that's not the last best ball we're going to be doing, and specifically not a certain kind of best ball. I think we have another one lined up here.
Yeah, we're going to be launching a new combined best ball league. Some people who did the last one have been asking, when's the next one coming? And we said last episode we wanted to wait until all the rookies were in the database. We did that, but then we also wanted to really squeeze in an IDP only draft. So again, thank you to the 10 folks alongside us that made this show possible here today with 1 hour timers that were turned off overnight. We're not cruel, but we do appreciate everyone who's drafted with us, and we want more people to draft with us. And one of the ways to do that is to do some of these really fun combined leagues. So we're going to be doing another combined best ball draft. It's going to have all the rookies in it. It'll be set up the same as combined best ball 1. Keep an eye out for details on that league, for how to sign up. Like all of our leagues, it'll just be $5. So you have a little bit of skin in the game. You're not going to get too silly with your picks, but it's still going to be fun. And we're going to build out some good ADP. And it's going to be really fun to see where some of the offensive rookies go in relation to the defensive rookies. This can help you as you get ready for your rookie drafts. If you're still in startup season for any of your dynasty leagues, this gives you a sense of some valuations if you want to build more of a win now kind of build, but still want to have some youth on your team. There's just lots of really useful things to mine for best ball, redraft, and beyond from doing these drafts. So hop in a combined best ball draft with us. We'll be launching it soon and looking forward to it.
Awesome. I can't wait to draft with you again, Scott. I can't wait to draft with all of our listeners. So excited to see you guys out there. Just one final reminder, please feel free to visit us at theidpshow.com. The IDP draft kit is out there. I mean, this is not hyperbole. Literally everything you need to go ahead and be successful for your IDP season and beyond. You're going to find that in the IDP draft kit. There's a lot of good free content that gets posted on there as well. Newsletter. So you need to be doing yourself a favor and at least checking it out. And you can do so over at theidpshow.com. So again, thank you to all the listeners. A huge shout out to all the drafters, and to everyone else. We will see you in the draft room.